Point number 35.
And then what about all the other Christians who don't interpret John 1:1 according to his Trinitarian view, that the definite article is missing? Now he'll argue and they'll argue, but it doesn't matter because let's just go to Jesus. So the definite article is missing before it says, and the Word was God.
Okay, now we're dealing with the definite article in John 1, verse 1. The definite article is missing, so it can't mean that the Word was God. This means absolutely nothing and will be demonstrated very soon. The truth of the matter is that the absence of the definite article means nothing. It is the context that determines the use of the word theos when the definite article isn't there. If we would press Sami's argument further, we would see that John 1:6 should be translated, there came a man sent from a God whose name was a John. In this verse, there is no definite article at all. According to Sami, this is the correct translation of the verse. If you want to press the definite article even further, since it seems to be such an obsession to the deniers of the divinity of Yeshua in John 1:1, let's look at John 20 verse 17, where it says, and I will go to the Father of me and a Father of you, and to a God of me and a God of you. There are no definite articles in this verse either. Surely there is no one that would argue that the proper translation of this verse should be anything else than my God and your God, and not a God of me and a God of you. But if you will be consistent, then that is exactly what you should do if you are one that insists that you need a definite article to understand this to be speaking of God, and not just a God. But interestingly enough, if you would go to John 20 verse 28, the definite article is used by Thomas. And said to him, my Lord and my God, literally, the Lord of me and the God of me. Ho kurios mu kai ho theos mu in Greek. Now this is spoken to Yeshua and not to Yeshua and someone else, as Sami and other Muslims have tried to argue by claiming that the my Lord part refers to Yeshua and the my God part refers to the Father. The text explicitly says Thomas answered and said to him, not to them, but to him. The only him in the text is Yeshua. This is clear evidence that the non-use of the definite article referring to the word theos is irrelevant. The proper meaning is determined by the context, not the omission of the article. And the fact that others are also called gods, theos, doesn't mean anything either, because others are called theos, but the difference is that when the word theos in reference to others than the God of Israel is used, it is always referring to false gods or idols. To think that John thought that the Word was a false god or an idol is just an untenable position. And the Word was with God and the Word was an idol, or the Word was a false god. Sure. Point number 36.
Another argument. Jesus is sinless. Is he? Let's read John chapter 8 verses 1 to 11. You all know the beautiful story of Jesus and the lady who was supposed to get stoned. I say this is a beautiful story because no matter which way you look at it, Jesus is a sinner. Now there's the Jews, they want to stone this lady. So Jesus comes up to them and he says, he who is without sin, cast the first stone. Did Jesus cast the stone? Did he? No. So he must be a sinner. But now the Christian will try to appeal to your emotions and they will say, but wait a minute, Jesus is showing his loving doctrine. But last I checked, you Christians say Jesus is a Jew. When I read the Jewish law, what happens to adulterers? Do they get stoned or do they get freed? So if Jesus is a Jew and he disregarded the Jewish law for this loving doctrine, he committed a sin for putting the Torah down and following his own law.
Sami claims that the story of the adulteress shows that Yeshua was a sinner. His argument is based on the following logic. The Torah demands the stoning of the adulterer, and since Yeshua didn't condemn her to be stoned, he didn't follow the Torah. And since he didn't follow the Torah, he was a sinner. adding up to the fact that he said that the one who was without sin who should have cast the first stone, but he didn't cast a stone himself, he acknowledged that he was a sinner. Now, I can see the astonishment of the face of the Christian that hears this objection for the first time, but this is actually raised as a real argument that Yeshua wasn't sinless. What Sami fails to understand is that there are two transgressors when adultery is committed. Obviously, the religious leaders were trying to trap him. If he would have said that she must be stoned to death, it would be unjust since the second party wasn't present also. Moreover, he would be violating the Roman rules and would get himself in trouble with them. Not only that, but he would have been violating the rule of the Sanhedrin, because only the Sanhedrin was able to pronounce the death penalty. But if he would say that she didn't have to be stoned, he would have been accused of not following the Torah. So the only way to answer them was to convince them of their own sinful ways and give them a taste of their own medicine without violating either the Torah or get himself in trouble with the Roman authorities, which is just what he did. Now, to expose Sami's deceitful methodology, in his debate with David Wood on the topic "Is Islam a religion of peace?", Sami brought up this hadith that he called a beautiful hadith, where a man came up to Muhammad and tells him that he committed an immoral act that was worthy of punishment. Now, Muhammad didn't want to punish him, but the man kept insisting that he should be punished, and eventually Muhammad gave the order to carry out the punishment. Sami found it to be so beautiful and claimed that the Prophet was so merciful. So when it's Muhammad being unwilling to punish when it is required by law, it is called merciful. But when Yeshua does the same thing, it is sinning. Now that Muhammad eventually carried the punishment out, that is not an argument, because the man repeatedly went to him and told him over and over again that he should be punished. But Muhammad didn't, which means that over and over again Muhammad neglected his law and sinned. Okay? But here is a hadith that has Muhammad failing to execute judgment as was required by Islamic law. From Sahih al-Bukhari 6437 we read, Ishaq ibn Abdullah ibn Talha related that Anas ibn Malik said, I was with the Prophet when a man came to him and said, Messenger of Allah, I have committed a had, so carry it out on me. He did not ask him about it. The time for prayer came and he prayed with the Prophet. When the Prophet finished his prayer, the man went to him and said again, Messenger of Allah, I have committed a had, so carry out the book of Allah on me. He said, Did you not pray with us? Yes, he answered. He said, Allah has forgiven you your wrong action, or your had. So, according to Sami, Muhammad is a sinner according to his own standards. Don't back down and turn around and do a 180 and say that Muhammad didn't sin. Your prophet sinned, and he is a sinful hypocrite also, by your own standards. Point number 37.
And he disregarded the Jewish law for this loving doctrine. He committed a sin for putting the Torah down and following his own law. So you'll have to admit he's not a Jew. If he is a Jew, he should have stoned her. If he's not a Jew, then that proves our point. Then when we say Jesus isn't a Jew, but a Muslim. So either